headline I saw just the other day that said the German government collapses, and I was like, this sounds pretty extreme. So can you tell me what's happening here?
Yeah, it's uh, the German coalition government that's been in power for the last couple of years. Um, is it's actually known as the traffic light coalition. I guess there are three parties that make up the coalition. One is the Green Party. That's obviously the green light. The other is the Social Democrats. I think that's probably the red light. And then there's the third one, which is the Freedom Democratic Party. And never heard much about them. Olaf Scholz is a Social Democrat. He's the chancellor. And then Elena Baerbock, the idiotic. They're all idiots. But maybe Baerbock takes the cake. She's a foreign minister. And then the minister of economics is. His name escapes me right now. But he's also a member of the Greens. So there have always been strains because these parties are ideologically dissimilar, and I think maybe you can say especially the Freedom Democrats. And it was the Freedom Democrats that left the coalition and have brought about the collapse that you're talking about. Um, they are fiscal conservatives, unlike the other two. And Germany is a fiscally conservative country. They've been very careful about restraining their spending. They're very averse to debt and to deficits. And the Freedom Democrats are part of that. So they're well within the German, fiscal tradition. What happened, of course, was the hyperinflation of the 1920s. That's something that's seared into the German memory, and they swore never again. We're not going to risk that. So they have kept their debts and deficits under control. Now, I guess what happened was that the Olaf Scholz and the Green Party were trying to borrow a large amount of money for Ukraine, and I think it's Christopher Lind. I'm not sure about that. Linden. I'm not sure. I'm terrible with names, but it was the head of the Freedom Democrats that refused. He said, we don't. That's money we don't have, and um, apparently he said, I've seen at least in one report, he said, well, don't send him money. Why don't you just send him the Taurus missiles? And then Olaf Scholz, to his credit, said, no, we're not doing that. Again, this is something that he's remained firm on. And it seems clear that this is, we've said that there don't seem to be any red lines that the Europeans and the Americans won't cross. This does appear to be a red line that they won't cross. So, sending long-range missiles that could strike deep into Russia. And the Taurus is one of those. It has a range of 500 kilometers. But that's kind of tangential to this. But the thing was, it was a budget issue. And the Freedom Democrats refused to go along. And so they said, well, then we don't want you. That's what the Social Democrats and the Greens said. And so, okay, he packed up his bags and left. The whole party withdrew from the coalition. And without them, they don't have, enough people to govern Germany. So they're going to have to hold elections. I believe the elections will be held in January.
Did this have anything to do with Trump winning the presidency? Because it seems like it happened right after the election, right? That this collapse happened. So is there some type of tie there?
Well, people have speculated as to that, and some people argue that it does have something to do with the election. Um, one of the ideas that was put forward was that, like Olaf Scholz and Baerbock and the rest of them they hate Trump so much that they can't bear the thought of actually having to cooperate with him. I don't think so. I don't think it really had anything to do with Trump. There were strains already, and the fiscal issue is a real issue, right? I mean, that's something it's always been there, and we've heard about it. I think like a couple months ago, we're hearing that some about arguments over the budget, and
Right.
I think again the Freedom Democrats just remain firm, and so the coalition just fell apart.
Right. Well, I mean, the budget is tied to the Ukraine project as well.
Yeah. So it
The
is.
government was asking.
Right. Exactly. So it is very much linked to Ukraine. There's no question about it. Now they're all, virulent Russophobes. They're all, very fervent supporters of Ukraine, including the Freedom Democrats. But the Freedom Democrats are fiscal conservatives on top of that, and they won't abandon those principles for the sake of Ukraine.
Right. Well, I mean, Trump has really voiced his displeasure with the Ukraine-Russia war and talks
Yeah.
about wanting to end it. We talked about whether how possible that is, but definitely it seems to have taken the wind out of the sails of a lot of the European politicians that want this war to continue.
Right.
So do you think that's having repercussions, shockwaves through the EU
Yeah.
in,
Well, there
in regards to
clearly
this war?
is. I mean, there's a great deal of fear and loathing within in Europe. But I remember that back in 2016, and their fears were not realized. None of them were. There was a fear that he would bring about the end of NATO, which would have been a wonderful thing. I think that was a good reason to support Trump. He said that what's the point of NATO, and he was right, right? But when he took power, he expanded NATO. He made it stronger than ever. And so all the fears that the Europeans had about that were completely unjustified. And I'm afraid I'm a cynic on this. I'm afraid that their hysteria and all the fears that they're expressing now, that all of that's going to be gone in a year or so. When Trump puts together a team that's just like the old team, and that the same old policies remain in place. I think that
Really that cynical?
I am that cynical. Okay, I'm not.
I
I'm not
mean,
100% sure. I've said because there clearly are some people within his inner circle who really understand what's going on in Ukraine and do want to bring an end to it. But there are others who are, that are like Mike Pompeo, for example, or our South Carolinian friend
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham, right? I mean, these people, there's nobody's worse than them, and he's also butting, up with them, and sometimes he says things that reflects their. So you just don't know with Trump, and I'm afraid, just based on past experience, that he'll just go with the same old people. Again, I'll be very happy. There's a chance, I admit, there's a real chance that we'll get a significant change of course. There's a chance of that, whereas there was no chance with Harris. But I think still the odds, the smart money is on the deep state winning the battle and maintaining the course. So I
I'll
think
put
the
money on
Europeans are
that.
going to, in the end, their fears are unjustified. I think they'll prove to be unjustified. They'll get the same old thing. But the one thing that will remain constant is they personally detest the man. They really dislike him.